So look, I've seen like a dozen tutorials on setting up Claude Code and VS Code, and they all do the same thing. They show you how to install it, maybe one command and then just end. No one shows you what happens when the login fails. Nobody talks about the Claude MD file that actually makes Claude useful, and nobody shows you a real workflow like here's what I built before Claude Code and here's what it looks like now. That's what this video is. The setup guide I wish existed when I started. No fluff, no skip steps, and I'm not saying you need to be a developer. I'm a solopreneur, not an engineer. If you can install a VS Code extension, you can do this. So let's dive in. So why Claude Code and VS matters. Before, if you use something like a ChatGPT or even Claude, you have the AI chat and you're basically manually dragging files into it. I can probably bring this up. So this would be a new chat. You just start the conversation, and let's say you want to reference a file. You're like, hey, look at this. And there's been updates as the time I'm speaking. There's Claude Code, which is very cool, different than what we're talking about here. But if you're using something like ChatGPT, then this is the interface you would see more or less on other chat forms as well. And dump it in there. You would just bounce between files, dumping it back, and sometimes you reach a context limit. So Claude Code changed that. It lives inside my editor, it reads my files, it understands my context. So let me actually show you the content repurposer workflow for long form videos. Here's actually diagrams it does for me. Here's the process. In the past, I would go back and forth with ChatGPT or Claude, and I would generate the long form script. It would go back and forth. Every single time I would start, even if you create a Claude project or a custom GPT, it's the same thing. You would have to sometimes upload context, go back and forth, and it's a pain in the butt. And so what I do here, I just have a single file in my .claude, and it's just called transcript, and I just dump, for example, competitors transcripts, and I just literally type in the keyword I'm targeting, and I just get to work, and it runs, spits out a script. Simple as that. I'm not going back and forth. I'm not dumping different files every single time. And look, here's like an example of the script, right? It tells me what I need to talk about, guides me through the transcript. And before, I would just, like I said, I would go back and forth on chat windows like this, typing it, hoping that Claude would get it right the first time, re-explaining myself, and the context will fill up quick. Because when you think of Claude Code, it might just sound like coding, but now it can do things that an A10 can do, sometimes even better. Besides code, you could use it for writing, like I just showed you earlier, to create scripts. You could use it to create blog posts. But let's get to the setup. I'm going to walk you through every single step you need because some guys may skip through this. This part is not complicated, but it's still important you understand the basics. So you're going to head over to VS Code website. If you just Google Perplexity, just type in VS Code, VS space code, you'll land here eventually. Right? Download it for the Mac, Windows, whatever you have. And once you download it, install it, and you'll see something like this. Now, when you install it for the first time, it's not going to have this. But look, I'm going to show you how it looks like as a blank screen. A few things you want to understand here. You see here I have recents. You're gonna have nothing, right? And that's fine. So the way I like to think of your code base or your workspace here is think of it as a folder. Imagine a folder as your cabinet. This is where all the stuff you're going to work on is going to be here. I have a folder, and all I do there is stuff that helps me stay productive, like create blog posts, create X tweets, create scripts. That's all I do. It just helps me create content more efficiently. And I have other workflows like editing videos. So anything that helps me stay productive goes there. I have a site, and if you think like a folder is nothing, look at this. This is actually hosted in a folder. This is using Astro Framework. And so all this is managed in a code base, in a project, in a folder. And that's what that is. So when you start for the first time, you're going to have to create a new folder, and I would just hit open. And let's say you create a new folder and you type in test. You can just drop it in there, and then you're done. And then it would open it, and it will look something like this. Is essentially like how your workspace will look like. And initially, it's not going to look like this, but it'll have a blank terminal window. And this is what VS Code is. It's just a means of viewing and interacting with the terminal in a very slightly different way. I'm technical, but I'm not going to just use the terminal. So what I do, that's what VS Code does. It makes it a little pretty. You can see the folders in here, which makes it easier. So you can see what kind of stuff is within your folder, right? So within my productivity main folder, I have all these subfolders within subfolders within subfolders. And that's all that is. To install it is pretty straightforward, like you would install any app. And then once you install it, you just open it. And this is assuming you already have Claude Code installed. But you would just go to Google, Claude Code, and then install it. You would run this command, and you'll be set. So that's how you install Claude Code. And then once you install Claude Code, if you were to type in Claude, it'll work like this. So just pay attention to how this works. This is Claude. I'm just going to close this. And then if I was to go here, again, you see this terminal window at the bottom? I would just type in Claude, and it should open it, and you can just drag it like that. So this is a new Claude instance. And another tip which I mentioned before, is you want to rename it. It's in here somewhere, rename. So let's say you're going to work on blog content, you just type in blog. And this is just a little 5-second thing, but it saves you a lot of headaches. When you have 20 tabs running, or maybe 10, you're going to forget what they are. So this just keeps everything organized. It's just a good habit. I just realized I skipped a step, but I showed you just going through installing VS Code and then installing Claude Code. Now, once you install Claude Code, you could keep running with VS Code, which is what I'll recommend, but you could just run it through the terminal, right? You could just do this, type in Claude, and then just work your way. You can have your slash commands. You can see everything. The problem is, like, you can't see the folders. You can maximize the window, and it's just not going to show you anything. So some people prefer this because it's a little, but the gains are really not that massive. So it's just really personal preference. But these are the two ways to run it: either CLI, which is what you see here, or with VS Code. All right. So one thing I want to mention here is pricing. Claude Code has different tiers. You can do the 17. It's actually $20 if you do monthly. Or the 100, which is what I recommend if you're serious about using it. I think you can go far with this plan. Just to give you some context, I was able to build my website. I was able to have a lot of conversations with Claude, and I still wouldn't run out of credit. But if you can't afford it, just start with this. And if you can get by with that, then that's great. And eventually, if you start seeing the ROI and you can afford it, upgrade to the $100 plan, because this gives you a lot of room. You can build websites, code for a few hours, really nonstop, unless you're doing something in parallel, which means you're running multiple agents. So you got to figure out where you land. But start here if you really have never used Claude, and then work your way up to the max plan. So we've got Claude Code installed. You got VS Code installed. You probably created your test folder, and then you just open that folder, and then you'll go here to something like this. So now let me show you how to actually make it useful. So first thing, you should run it in init, which creates your Claude MD file. And that's going to be very important because that Claude MD, think of it like the memory or the preferences of your agent, which is Claude, is going to tell you basically how this code base works. So let's say you're working with a website. It's going to have certain preferences of the website. If I'm using Astro Framework, if I have certain folders, my structure, types of stuff that I have in there, that's what that Claude MD file is going to be specific to that project or code base. If you were to do it here in productivity, same thing. It knows that, okay, I have these folders, this structure, certain preferences here that I'm going to do versus doing in my website. So that's why you want to separate every project with Claude Code. If you're just starting off, just create a productivity folder like mine, and you'll figure it out like that. And if you want to have a website, create a separate one for that. But that's what that is. You want to run the init, and then Claude Code throughout your instance of using it is going to update that file. That Claude MD file should not be too heavy because it's going to burn a lot of tokens, which means it's going to cost you more, and it's just going to be inefficient. It's not meant to be heavy. It's meant to be light, but also useful. Here's a tip to make your Claude MD file specialized. Once you get situated after a day or two, even when you just started, I would just explain to Claude, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the code base that I'm going to do. Please update my MD file as needed. So give it all that rich context and ask Claude to update your MD file. But the point is that you want to teach Claude to be an expert on itself, because the Claude documentation lays down everything, how everything works. Let me actually show you what this looks like in practice, because a setup without a demo is pretty much useless. So let me actually show you a real use case. High level, I'm going to cover with a little bit of the structure here, right? These are my folders, but the main ones are agents, commands, and skills. You probably heard about skills. These are the core things in Claude Code that you're going to be using frequently. So let me actually just cover a slash command. If I was to type a slash command, all these pop up, custom ones and just pre-built ones out of the box from Claude Code. But let me ask Claude Code to actually build it for me. Hey Claude, I'm trying to do a demo for my YouTube video. What's a good slash command to create, and use the appropriate skill to build the slash command? Create it, and then once we're done, please remove it. So let's see if it works. Let's see what it comes up with. And so what I asked it to do is twofold. It already knows it has a skill. For that, you have your skills of your own. You know how to draw, you know how to write. And so that's what that is. It gives you a more specialized task, and it just created one that says demo. It created a slash command. So now going back to this, let's see what it did. Interesting. This is something I could be using. So what it did, it created a demo to show you what it can do. It took account of everything I have here. So I have 434 files. I have 78 folders, and I have 50,000 lines of code. That is crazy. So I'm not even a coder, and look how much lines of code I have. So Claude Code came up with this on its own just to show you the demo. and it actually told me something useful. So this is actually interesting because I've been meaning to clean my code base for my project, because there's a lot of stuff. Once you start using Claude Code heavily, before you know it, a lot of folders pile up, a lot of junk. That's a good habit. You want to clean things up, because look how many agents I have. These are a lot of agents, and commands, probably a lot too. So you start losing track of things. But now you actually saw how it got built. And it took me like 1 minute. So imagine having to count as your own, or creating some type of script that would take you longer. And this is just a random use case, and it was actually pretty useful. And just to give you more ideas, some of the stuff that I use Claude Code for on this code base are analytic insights, meaning to study my social media analytics. That's going to get replaced soon, because I have a Claude Bot Expert. You can use it for generating long form videos, LinkedIn. One of my favorite ones is images. And just to show you something really cool is this. Look at my image folder. This is where I believe thumbnails for YouTube come out. These are images for social media, which is still pretty cool. So in the past, you would have to design some of this stuff. So that's the power of Claude Code. You can teach it to become an expert of prompting Gemini, and then it can consistently generate good images. And even if you stack like prompt templates in your Notion or somewhere, you have to manually copy it, manually paste it, and it wouldn't be as good. That's it. I use it for newsletter. Thumbnails is another use case, just to give you some ideas. You can see here some of these images come out bad sometimes. It's not always perfect, but these are pretty sick. And like, you can do a lot of amazing stuff with Claude Code. It's just a matter of how creative are you, right? What are you going to be doing? It goes from something as basic as this to thumbnails, social media graphics. I even have a Claude Code setup to edit YouTube videos. So that should hopefully get your juices flowing. Before you actually set all this up though, let me actually save you some pain and show you what potentially can break, because it's not perfect. Your authentication token may expire, and that just for whatever reason, you either logging in and out different places, or it just gets expired. And what that means is when you log in, let's say you were typing Claude, it won't let you. So all you gotta do is re-authenticate. You just gotta type in the command Claude, and it should prompt you to re-authenticate. And one of the quirks with using VS Code, for me, I'm using an M1 Mac Pro. It's old, but it still works. So if you're running on something newer, you'll be fine, hopefully. What ends up happening is after using it for a while, and now a few hours, sometimes it freezes and you have to shut it down. You have to restart it. And a hack for that is type in Claude, even if it's in a brand new window. You won't have the luxury like you do in Claude, the web version. So what you got to do is hit slash and then resume. Hit enter, and it should load up the chats. And then you just choose the latest one. And that's pretty much how you jump back to the window. Other issues that I've run into is depending how you set it up and how you triage it or how you fix it. Honestly, I fixed it by asking Claude Code to fix it. So that's the cool part. You don't have to be technical. Whatever issue you run into, just literally throw it back at Claude. Answer. But typically, you can just work within Claude Code. And you would say, hey, Claude, I get this issue, paste it, and then ask it to fix it. Or you don't have to paste it. You say fix it. One of the issues that you run into is, you see how it says Opus here? Sometimes there's an issue when you see like Sonnet. That's the default. You're like, but I didn't change it, but it has Sonnet. It means that it's probably using an old version. So you want to make sure this is updating automatically. And you'll get an error here somewhere on the right side or somewhere in the bottom where it will let you know if there's an error. So that's how you can diagnose it. But generally speaking, it should be updating automatically. But if you see something like Opus, you may want to check your version and make sure it's updating. And if it feels slow, like I said, just restart it and it should be good to go. Restart your computer. And you can just resume with the slash resume once you log in. All right, that's the whole thing. Let's wrap this up. If you actually set this up, drop a comment and let me know how it went. I break down workflows like this every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you want my best stuff delivered straight into your inbox, I drop a weekly newsletter with tools and systems that I'm actually using. Links in the bio.